Are you in control of your life, or are you just reacting to stimuli? This is a family episode, so it's just Otis and we're talking all about living with intention. What does living with intention look like, and what happens when you don't live with intention? Is 360 out of 365 good or bad? How can you break out of reaction mode? And stay tuned to find out how you can shift your outcomes so that even your bad days make progress towards your goals. Quick reminder, rate, review, and subscribe to the show wherever you're listening. You can also find the full videos of the show on our YouTube page. And if you learned something from Otis or me in our conversation, make sure to share the episode with someone else so they can learn it too. The best way to support our show is to share your favorite episode with the rest of your tribe. This episode is brought to you by Tribe and Purpose. That transition from college to that first career is a difficult one, and it's even harder when you lose your sense of identity. If you're an athlete who just hung up the cleats, it's hard to go from being a rugby player to being Joe in accounting. We created Next is Best to help retired college athletes use their skills to create an impact through entrepreneurship. Next is Best by Know Your Tribe will help to smoothen that rough transition by helping you establish a clear sense of purpose, an actionable path to success, and the tools you need to manage your life. Your 20s are a confusing and chaotic time. Next is Best gives you the tools you need to make sense of the chaos and make this next chapter of your life the best one yet. You can learn more about Next is Best by Know Your Tribe at findyourpurpose.coach. Now here's Cam and Otis with the show.
Hey, welcome to the Cam and Otis Show. On this episode, Camden and I are going to dive into what it's like to live with intention. I mean, those of you who've been following me on social media have probably heard me say my favorite phrase, that we should live with intention in pursuit of our purpose to achieve our success. And you can take out our and put in your and my. And when you start to think about it in that sense, living with intention, what does that mean? Well, that means you're in control. Mm-hmm. You're not in what I would call reaction mode. And what I mean by reaction mode, because I've been there, pretty much my last few years of the Army was reaction mode. My first few years, probably 5+ years in the business world, were in reaction mode. I would show up in the morning, or even after getting out of the Army in the business world, I would wake up in the morning and look at my phone, and that was how I would start my day, is reaction mode to whatever might have came in to my phone overnight. And even in the Army, we used to joke about it, but PT time, physical training, go for runs with the team and store stuff, was at 6:30. I'd get to the shop at 5:30 so I could check the emails and see what crisis happened overnight.
See what kind of day you're going to have.
Because there was all, and you judged, your day started that way. And now what I've realized is how much different your life can be when you do not allow, our favorite security blanket to judge how we perform our day, how our day is arranged, and what we're going to do. I'll give a very recent example. So back to writing my second book. Mm-hmm. Yes, folks. I looked at the date the last time the document was saved. It was July 2019. Oof. I was like, dang, man, I knew it'd been a while, but I was thinking it was only like a year or so. But the computer don't lie on that kind of stuff.
No, it doesn't. That Google Doc gets you. That happened to me too.
Yeah. So as I'm sitting here reading what I wrote and going, damn, I wrote that? Thinking to myself, that's not bad, Otis. I'm enjoying reading this. Mm-hmm. But I made the mistake of not putting on, the do not disturb function, which is what we do when we record. And the second mistake I made was I left my phone face up. So what does our phone do when it receives a message?
Well, you get that light.
It lights up. Yeah. It lights up. And then, if you didn't know it, folks, you're a predator. And what I mean by that is our eyes, our whole head and mind are designed to hunt. Mm-hmm. And that means, we joke about the shiny object in the squirrel. Well, that's the predator, the instinctual predator. So when a light flashes off in my periphery vision, guess what my mind says? Better check it. And as soon as my mind says better check it, I've now removed my eyes from the screen on something I was thinking about, focused on, and I've allowed a uncontrolled, inanimate stimulation. That's the word I was looking for. Inanimate stimulation to come into my world and me to react to it. I am no longer moving forward with intention. I am in reaction mode in something that simple. And it's simple, but we all allow it to happen. Man, I see people all the time. Hell, I'm one of them. You know, having dinner with Miss Suzanne, phone lights up. I gotta go. Oh, who's that? You know, or it buzzes or whatever, right? So, I mean, why would I have dinner with Miss Suzanne if we're just going to sit there and look at our phones all the time?
And
whether it's playing a game, scrolling through social media, or whatever. Why do I bother? Why do we bother scheduling to sit down at the table if that's what we're going to do? You know, we're allowing external stimulus. There's the phrase I was looking for. External stimulus to come in and take over and put us in reaction mode. And when we're in reaction mode, we're no longer living with intention.
And I think the why, you asked this kind of in in asking the opposite type of way. It was like, well, then why do we do this if I'm just going to let this stimulus, if I'm just going to let this distraction, distract me from what's going on there. And I think that's a really big piece of it.
Don't let the distraction distract you.
Don't let the distraction distract you. Come on, it's really that simple, guys. That's just we get the podcast right here. Just don't let distractions distract you. But really, what it comes down to is the why is. Why? Sorry, God, I'm bad at this today. Why is the why? Living with intention, it all starts with the why. And, I was already thinking of an example, but your dinner example I like a lot too, is are you sitting down to have dinner and to just sit there and to, get your nourishment so that your body can recharge for the next day? Or are you looking to spend time together as a couple? Those are two different intentions. If you have that first intention, answer the phone. And the reason I make that distinction is because that's the intention that you're setting for that time. And when you set that intention, you'll most likely you're going to follow it. And if not, you're going to catch yourself when you're doing what you were saying there and letting that stimulus distract you, letting that distraction distract you. And it's going to, when you have that why to work with, you're going to stay on track more because you're thinking about the purpose behind your actions. And that's how you live with intention. The example that came to mind for me was it's just like being out at like a rugby practice. If I'm out there coaching, I have no reason to be on my phone because I'm out there committed to that, right? There's all sorts of other situations where I'm not fully committing myself and I'll pull out the phone and I'll check things or I'll answer a call. Heck, there'll be practices where I know I have an important phone call coming and like I've got that intention in the back of my mind because I know I need to take that call. But it's all about having that kind of honest conversation with yourself of what is the purpose behind these actions. And I think that's what that really goes back to. And what that makes me want to ask you, Dad, is what happens then when you don't live with intention, when you don't have that purpose behind your actions?
Then in reaction mode, you're out of control. And when we're out of control, the other way of looking at it, out of control is the extreme. But the other way of looking at it is we're just going through the motions in life. It's the one of my favorite old school commercials is probably 20 years ago is the Dunkin' Donuts guy. The alarm goes off at 3 o'clock in the morning. He rolls out of bed in this groggy state and goes, "Time to make the donuts, time to make the donuts," right? And they show him 3 or 4 times. But what he's doing, we'll just call him Dave, the Dunkin' Donuts guy. What Dave is doing is he's just going through the motions in life. He's showing up at the shop, half asleep, and just going through the motions of making the donuts. And the whole idea of the commercial is Dave is going through these motions and sacrificing for us to enjoy Dunkin' Donuts, right? But the reality of it is when you look at what the life that Dave is living, If he was living with intention, if his life's purpose was to serve sweet, juicy, round things with a hole to people to make them happy, then he would not be time to make the donuts. He'd be time to make the donuts.
Exactly.
Big difference, right? So what Dave, the Dunkin' Donuts guy, was doing was just going through the motions in life. And I see that in people all the time. Hell, I've been that person. Back to that, just show up. I got to be there. What time do I have to be there? Okay, 7:30 in the morning. All right. What time can I leave? 3:30. Okay, got it. I set my timers, and that's what I'm doing. I show up at 7:30, see what's happening, look at the calendar kind of as it goes along. I mean, thank you, Mr. Google, Mr. Jobs, all them sort of people that give us this nice 10-minute reminder that, hey, you have a meeting. So I don't even have to look at my calendar. Think about that. I can truly live my life thanks to all this electronic support where I just react to the next notification. And too many people do that.
Yeah,
there's got to be like 70, 80% of the world that's how they live their life. The email notification, the text notification, the meeting notification, their phone dings for Slack, their phone dings for Instagram, you name it. And they react to every single one of them. And because they're in this reaction mode, they're never doing what they want to do. That brings us back to living with intention. Living with intention is doing what you want to do, accomplishing what you want to accomplish so that you can move closer to achieving the success you want to achieve while fulfilling your purpose. That's the difference. And it's so much more satisfying, and you'll be so much happier in life as opposed to showing up, seeing what's going to happen. Okay, yep, go through the motions. Oh, it's lunchtime. Okay, I eat the same sandwich. I'm eating my sandwich not because I enjoy it, but because it's just time to eat the sandwich. Not because my body needs fuel, but because it's time to eat the sandwich. And you're going through this motions in life, and all you're doing is finger drilling it. You're not living. And that's sad. It's a sad way to live. Just point blank. Sad. I feel sorry for you folks.
Yeah, and I think the way I would phrase it is, you said this at the beginning of it's out of control. You're letting your life be out of control. And then you were like, I'm not really sure that's the right phrasing. I got the right phrasing for you. It's in someone else's control. It makes me think of Marcus Aurelius, and I want to say it's book 9, but one of the later books in Meditations, he talks about being, if you're giving into pain, if you live your life based on pain, then you are a slave to pain. You're not a free man, you are a slave to pain. Well, what you're talking about there is being a slave to impulses, letting all of those impulses pull you in those different directions and push you where they want you to go. And that's not even getting into, on the social media context, if it's malicious or not, it doesn't freaking matter. You're following that impulse. And just like you said earlier, that stimulus, we talk about Viktor Frankl all the time. You can separate that stimulus and you can choose your response. And you have to keep in mind too that this is your environment. When you're living with intention, you talk about do not disturb. That's controlling your environment. We have all these pieces of technology. I feel like once every few episodes, we kind of knock on technology. And I think it's something people like to do now. It's like the really easy, like, well, what's wrong with the world? Why are we so divided? Well, it's technology, obviously. And yet we all use it, right? And this is the full transparency here. You and I both love technology. Our producer Norman loves technology even more than us. We're always talking about these new things. What can we do? What kind of new camera can we get to go into 4K and get all the quality up? Maybe there's a new platform. And then that's just in our work life. We do the same thing in our social lives as well. And that's okay. Then when you're living with intention, you could set those boundaries. And I think that's an important distinction there, is that you can to some extent, you can have your cake and eat it too. You can have your nice fancy smartphone if you know when to shut it off, if you know when to leave it in the other room, if you know when to put it into do not disturb. I mean, there are 3 really easy ways you can, put those boundaries up now. But I think it goes back to the living with intention. I think about, I sat getting a tattoo last week for 5-6 hours, and I scrolled Instagram for the most time I have in probably months, because I didn't have anything intended for that time. So I was just sitting there and I was just scrolling and laughing at videos, sending to my friends. The difference of
having the intention for that time versus just filling it with whatever, whatever's passe in that moment. It's like we've talked about Richard Thaler's The Thinker and the Doer, right? When you live with intention, you're letting the thinker create the boundaries for your environment, and you're going to get more successful because to give the recap, the thinker maximizes utility over the long term, which is what you want. The doer is the one who, like I was saying in my tattoo, fill that gap and just sits there on Instagram because you're like, dopamine monkey, this feels good for a little bit longer. And when you don't have intention, you're going to let the doer get in all the time. I think that's one of my favorite ways to think about it. Maybe it's my econ brain a little bit, but the living with intention is empowering the thinker and setting the boundaries for the doer so that the doer doesn't wreck all of your plans. And I think that's a really important piece there, because there's always going to be temptation. There's always going to be stimulus. There's always going to be those different impulses. But just like anything else, the more you practice that intention, the better you're going to get with it. Which brings me to another piece I want to ask you about, because we talk about this.
Before we
go ahead.
Shift off of that, I want to.
Yeah.
I thought about this earlier, and I just want to touch on a little bit of tactics. I was listening to Tim Ferriss' podcast the other day, and his guest was James Clear, author of Atomic Habits. And it was really, really, if you want to, there are so many nuggets in that podcast, folks, for business and life, from both of them. And one of the things I thought was really interesting in this, following the four rules, and I can't remember them from Atomic Habits.
That's why you don't number things.
But but it's to create, the habit, right? And make it easy, make it rewarding, and these sort of things. Sorry about that, James. I guess I need to reread the book again. But what I thought was really funny was, and this is the tactics, is Tim Ferriss saying, dude, I made a batch of brownies the other day, and I ate the whole goddamn thing. I didn't. And this is why I don't make brownies, and I don't allow brownies in the house. And oh, by the way, Pringles chips. No Pringles chips in my house because I'll eat the whole damn can. And this is Tim saying this, and this goes back to that, what you touched on, is there are ways of avoiding it. Mm-hmm. There are ways of avoiding this, the phone dinging, the computer fly-ins, all those sort of things. There's ways of turning those off. And the irony is we blame technology, and we blame these guys who create it and continue to create it and create these algorithms that give us, like you said, that dopamine hit that make us want more. But nobody's making you. Mm-hmm. It's all your own choice. And that's the irony of it. We blame technology for divisiveness. We blame social media for what's becoming of our children and all these sort of things. And you know what? When I was growing up, our parents blamed TV, the evil.
Before that, it was radio.
TV, right? Before that, radio, and before that, it was probably
books,
eating worms.
I've read old like diaries and things before of people literally like critiquing the fact that people are reading too much, like 150, 200 years ago. Yeah. And it's like, that's hilarious to me.
How ironic is that, isn't it? When we think about that, but again, it all boils down to who's choosing. Mm-hmm. Ain't nobody making me pick up my phone. Ain't nobody making me do that. It is my choice to pick it up. It's my choice, and my choice that I don't have several apps that people communicate with me on. Don't give me notifications at all.
Yep. So,
folks, if you're communicating with me on one of those channels, sorry, I might see it, I might not.
And I think that's the nugget for taking action in your own life is most people, you might not even realize how many boundaries you already have. It's like, oh, well, Instagram doesn't give me notifications, but Facebook does. Well, that's an example of you setting that boundary and it working. So there's, it's a proven case study, I guess is what I mean.
Yeah.
But the thing that you make me think of, it's always like the have to. Well, this is kind of the opposite end of the spectrum. We talk about purpose and living with intention is, well, I have to do this. I have to do that. And it brings me to one of my favorite Sturgill Simpson songs. But he says, you don't have to do a goddamn thing except sit around and wait to die. That's the only thing you have to do, right? When it really comes down to it, everything else is a choice. What your choice is there is, you could to put into two dichotomies, or to put into a dichotomy there, is your choice is that you could be that slave to an impulse, or you can live with intention. And that's really what it's talking about. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to have a phone. You don't have to do any of this kind of crap, right? We don't have to sit here on the podcast. We're doing it because it contributes to our purpose. We're doing it because when we are planning our days, we decide that this is something we want to intentionally do to get better, to share these conversations, all of these different types of things that go into it. And I think that's the really important piece there, is that you always have the choice. You always have the choice. And it's just, which choice are you going to make? And in that same vein, this is actually even a better segue than I had before. So thanks for the diversion there, Dad. You always have that choice. Well, some days you make the wrong choice, just like you were talking about Tim Ferriss in that story with the brownies. So is living with intention every day achievable? Or like, what's like, are we talking like, if I get 360 out of 365, is that pretty good? Like, where are we talking here? What's my measure of success?
You are your own measure of success. That's the other thing. Is 360 out of 365 an A, B, C, D, or is it an F?
Yeah.
You decide. Nobody. If you allow an exterior person, item, or thing to decide for you, then you've given up your ability to live with intention. Because you, in the end, I am the only judge of my success. I am the only judge of whether or not today was a good day or a bad day. I am the only judge of my workout this morning. Was it a good workout, or was it a bad workout, or was it okay? Did I go through the motions, or did I push it a little bit? I am the only one who decides that. I am the only one who says, I want to read for 30 minutes today, and I only read for 25 minutes. Is that a go or a no-go? I'm the one who decides that. There's no drill sergeant standing over me, not anymore. Thanks, Drill Sergeant Gates. If you're out there listening, I hope you are. I appreciate everything you taught me those 10, 12 weeks, however long that was, where we got to know each other really well. But dang, that was flashback now. Almost, I've kind of forgot what I'm saying. Oh, back to, it's my decision, right?
Yeah.
The standards, we joked about this with Fran the other day. The minimum standard wouldn't be a standard if it wasn't a minimum available, right?
Right.
But if you accept the minimum as your success, then who am I to say, right? I had some guys that would do that, right? 60 push-ups. They do 60 push-ups, they get up. I go, dude, you can do a lot more. They're like, yeah, but that's the minimum. That's all I need to do. Okay. That was success for them. And it was for me to criticize them is me putting my judgment of the standard on them, not themselves. That's what we're talking about, is who's deciding whether or not you're successful. In the end, it's yourself. Ain't nobody else. Ain't the number of likes, number of comments, those sort of things on social media or whatever, or how many people subscribe to your newsletter, or you name it. By the way, Monday Moments newsletter, subscribe. But in the end, all you're doing, if you are judging the number of likes or the minimum standard, if you will, if you're judging that, then you're allowing somebody else to influence you. You have to decide what's success for you. What's a good day? What's a bad day?
And the thing I want to add there is that when you're putting your judgment on others, it's a reflection of your own insecurity. We've talked about this, like when we're judging others, when we see everything you see in the world that you hate is a reflection of something inside yourself that you hate. When you see somebody stopping at 60 push-ups and you're like, gosh, that's sorry. Well, it's because you did 80, but you could do 90. You know what I mean? Like, you got to realize how much of that goes back to yourself a lot of the time, of why we like to judge others is because we don't like to judge ourselves. Right. And I think that's an important piece of it. Continuing on like the kind of like living with intention every day aspect there, Dad, How do you work to get it to every day? We had a conversation a couple weeks ago about, wins and, building small wins into bigger victories. And even if you have a bad day, you can get a small win to kind of build it back up. So in that vein, then, how do you work towards living with intention every day?
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Cam and Otis Show. If you're enjoying this conversation, then make sure to share it with other lifelong learners in your life so they can enjoy it too. Stay up to date with the show on Facebook and Instagram at Cam and Otis Show, and subscribe to our channel on YouTube so you're the first to hear about new episodes and other special content. Now let's get back to the show.
Well, the way that I do it, and it works, judging myself and my measure of success, I think it works pretty good. I'll put it in the pretty good category. B plus is always pretty good. Oh, by the way, you could also judge yourself as pretty good, an A minus or B plus, or is it an A, or is it a B or a C? I don't know. You decide. But the way I do it is I plan out my schedule, and boy, does it frustrate me when things get pulled off my schedule, and that's something that I work on personally. Now, and here's my schedule for the day, and guess who's the IT administrator in the McGregor clan household? It's you're looking at him right here, and when something goes wrong with the IT, guess who's working on it? Mm-hmm. That's the IT expert in the household, until I call a true expert. But when those things happen, that throws me off my intention. And this is a great example to demonstrate for everyone that how when we live with intention, something as simple as this is what I have planned out for the day, and an external stimulus comes in, like the Wi-Fi crashing or complete loss of internet service, and you name it, whatever it may be, and how that throws us off from the plan. But we choose whether or not it pisses us off and frustrates us like I do, because that's my pet peeve is the something throwing me off like that. But it's my choice still, because I could say, oh, cool. Guess what I get to spend time doing? And I say, I can't get rid of the irony even right now when I say it. The irony in my tone. Guess what I get to start doing? I get to research how to fix IT problem XYZ. Mm-hmm. Yay! Whereas I could flip that same thing, say those same words with a different tone in my voice, and say, yeah, man, I get to research some IT stuff. And I get to expand my knowledge so that if this ever happens in the McGregor clan household, I can fix it quicker. Yeah. Or if somebody I know has a similar problem, guess what I can do? I could help them out. Yeah. Right? Just a little change in attitude. So that is coming back to the how do you live with intention? You have a vision for success. You set what the goals are to achieve that vision, and you break those goals into objectives, and you break those objectives into your tasks, those things that you do today, this afternoon, to move you closer. And then you take it one step further, and you schedule time. If you don't schedule the time, it's still just this wonderful plan. Yeah. And plans are great, but scheduling the time is where it starts, the rubber meets the road. Mm-hmm. Now I've allocated the finite amount of time that I have in my day to do a task that moves me closer to my vision of success. Mm-hmm. And then how do I stay away from the stimulus? How do I put the boundaries up? Whether it's don't have chocolate in the house, turn the notifications off, put a curtain over the window so you don't see the car drive up or drive by, whatever those things may be, so that you're not distracted, so that you can focus on it. And then when you get pulled out of it, because it's going to happen at some point, right? Mm-hmm. Power goes out or flat tire, you name it, those things happen. So how do you react to it? Yeah. And how do you get back in the flow of it? That's living with intention and not reacting. And reaction, you have to react to some things that happen, stimulus that happens, but how you react is the choice still, right? The flat tire in the middle of the night, Miss Suzanne having a flat tire, in the snowy, cold, dark night on 25, well, that's going to happen. And how I choose to react to that is the choice that I'm making. I still have to react, but I can react with purposeful intention to not freak out about it and not be pissed off because it pulled me off my schedule and frustrated and all those sort of things. But I stay focused on it and I look at it as, oh, cool. Guess what I get to be reminded of, right? Change the tire drill, those sort of things. Or change the battery because the battery on the truck went out this weekend in the middle of nowhere. Gotta love that, right?
Oh, yeah.
But what happens, and I'll wrap this piece up with the thought of here's why you want it to be this way. Because when we're pissed off and we're frustrated, our mind goes into flight or fight mode. There we go. For some reason I have a hard time with them two words. My mind goes to that, and what that means is I only have two choices. Because I've got these blinders on, I don't see any other opportunity. But if I step back, pause, take a moment, take a deep breath, and go, all right, let's take a breath. Let's see what's going on. What are some options? What are some solutions? Then I get out of that, all right, I got to walk 6 miles to the nearest town to ask somebody to come jump me, right? No, I step back. All right, what are some options? What's some courses of action I can do? What are some other things I can do to handle this? Because if you're in that freak out mode, guess what you're doing? Well, crap, I'm walking.
Yeah.
You take one, the first thing that pops into your mind, reaction. So, don't get in reaction. Find yourself in reaction mode, pause, and see what other options there may be.
And the more intentionally you are, like you talked about planning, that's one thing that I thought of coming into this, like staying out of reaction mode for me, my daily reflection and then planning the next day is the best way to stay out of reaction mode. Because even if I have an idea of what I'm doing the next day and I'm like, I'll write my to-do list in the morning, that's already a lot of stimulus in that first hour of the morning that could jack up that whole day, right? So the more intentional you are, the better, because it helps you get back on track with those things. Even when something goes wrong, you can get back to it. And even when you have a crappy day, you can still work to get some things done because you know what your plan is, because you're living with intention with that. And that actually brings me to something I thought of, and I think I might be coining this quote here, Dad. If not, hope it might be paraphrased from you. But either way, we're going to do that research after the show. But it's that when your actions are aligned, even a bad day makes progress. And then when your actions aren't aligned, even a good day doesn't move the needle. And really, the way I like to think of that is, we talk about, we joke like everything's a spectrum, everything's a bell curve, right? Well, we talk about the bad 10% on the left end of the spectrum and then the good 10% on the right end of the spectrum. When you live with intention, what you do is you take that bell curve and you slide it to the right, a few points. And the better you are with it, the more you slide it. And what that means is that when you have a great day, you get even more done than you could have previously. And when you have a bad day, you still move the needle that little bit because you shifted the spectrum over, right? And I think that's a really important way of looking at it. Like you were saying, only you get to grade your performances on this. Well, when you're living with intention, even when you don't do that well, and you might want to beat yourself up because you didn't do every single thing on your to-do list that day or whatever it is, you still moved forward and you still did a lot more than if you were just letting the wind blow you whichever direction you were thinking that day, right? And letting all of those different stimuluses push you in all of those different directions. The more intentional you are, the more you're shifting that spectrum to the right. And I mean, I don't know how to put that more concrete than shifting that spectrum of outcomes to the right, Dad. Because as foo-foo as purpose and intention may sound sometimes, there's real outcomes, there's reality built all around it, and if you shift that spectrum, you're going to see those outcomes. You're going to see those benefits in the long run. And really in the short run too, right?
Oh, yeah. You'll feel it. I don't look at it as testing my probability knowledge here, which was a class I positively hated that I had to take as an undergraduate class going for my master's degree. So yeah, there was a lot of things going on there in my mind. So it's shocking I don't remember any of it. But what you're talking about is moving the curve one standard deviation to the right, or two standard deviations to the right. See, I remember some terminology.
There you go.
Not sure what that means, but I know those words. The way I like to think about it is I'm smoothing out the peaks and I'm flattening out the valleys. Yeah. So my highs aren't quite as high, because what I've seen happen in myself and clients is that high, if you're not living with intention, and you have that big win or whatever, you have this great big high, this super peak, and then all of a sudden something happens and it's like the bottom falls out into the bottomless pit of Sparta, right? That's the way it feels. But when we start to look at things more reasonably and more in control, and we take control, we make the choice to be in control, then the peaks aren't as crazy high. It's not this crazy jump and fall. It's more of a continuous climb. Yeah. And when things go wrong, we don't dip as deep. Mm-hmm. Think of it like a good mutual fund investment, right? I mean, it's going to go down and it's going to come up. It's going to go down, it's going to come up. But if you draw the line through the curve, then it's going to be always positive. It's going up. It's continuing up. So that's the way I like to think of it, as opposed to shifting our bell curve a standard deviation to the right.
Yeah, and the one thing I want to add there is that, as we're talking about this and, talking about like, okay, well, how do you live in tension? What's it look like without it? And then how do you get that to be more common, get that every day? And really, and I think you probably already knew this, even though you didn't say it specifically, but it's that living with intention is a skill. And you get better and better and better with it. You get natural with it. I talked about my reflection and planning my day so I can live with intention. I'm at a point now where I've been following the system for a while. If I don't have my to-do list, it's not near as bad as it used to be, because I have the skill to live with intention even without my structure always there, right? And I think that's an important way of looking at it, because in order to get better at a skill, we talk about flow states. To reach that flow state, you have to do something that's harder than your skill level, right? The opposition has to, the opposition, sorry, I went straight to sports, but the opposition has to be higher than your skill level, right? We talk about this in malls. You and I are having a conversation about malls and rugby the other day. You know how I'm pushing my malls to get better? I'm throwing 10, 12 guys against them, because it shifts this curve. So then when you're only going against 8, it'll be freaking easy. And that's the same type of thing. Like when you're living with intention, you're going to have hard days where the skill level is less than the opposition, but that's how you get better. That's how you raise that skill level. And then the more you do that, the more you're going to reach that flow state.
Yeah, well, you could also use the blue monster too.
Oh my gosh, you could drive that down.
Yeah, the blue monster. That was a scrum and mauling device that we used to use on the Grizzlies. It was quite literally a multi-ton device that. Fortunately, it never ran over anybody. I'm shocked that we never did. It was literally like a cartoon steamroller. It would have smashed somebody into the ground. It was that big and heavy.
And the one thing I got to say, this is tangential and no one else is going to know what this means really, but that pad that goes up, I need that. That is that more than the rest of the design on that thing. Just so you can hit that thing while you're in the air, like as you're coming down for the malls. Oh my gosh, it is so freaking good. But because I haven't seen that on any other ones. I've done some research. They don't really have that pop-up pad. Maybe because it's a pinch risk or something with that. But it's a shame.
No, folks, that just goes to show you. Newer doesn't necessarily mean better. It might be safer, but it doesn't mean better. So
sometimes you need a steamroller filled with sand and water, right? You don't need some fancy machine.
That's right. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what I learned today is the fact that you might not want to be quite as critical about yourself if 360 out of 365 is not that good. Well, first off, what the hell? 360 items to get done in a day?
Oh, I was
Damn,
saying
son.
out of the year. Every day you're living with intention.
Oh. Well, then you ain't doing enough. I just so you need to pick up the pace when you're only doing 360 things out of the year. That's what I learned is be careful, because sometimes we say things in jest, but in the Freudian slip, there might be some truth in lied in that 360 out of 365 is not good enough. Might be, just might be. So we have to be cognizant of that, folks, as you think about setting what your success is and your measures of success. Think about that. Camden, what'd you learn?
It was actually in that same vein of the 360 out of 365 as that example of, well, if you're living with intention every day of the year except for 5, well, then is that good enough? And you said it, well, it's up to you. And, folks, if you haven't watched his TEDx, that's basically what he was referencing there. The TEDx does a beautiful job of talking through that. But that's really an important thing to get that continual reminder of, is that you get to determine your own success. And we can... we always talk about it's like on the way to perfection, you find greatness. Well, don't beat yourself up for not having perfection yet. It's important to keep moving towards it, right? We want to keep getting better, but you also have to be happy with the greatness that you found, or the goodness that you found if you're not at greatness yet. But I think that's a really important piece just to remind myself of all the time, of making sure that, you're staying positive when you're looking at the progress that you've made and realizing you can grade your own test that way. Dang it, I stole your catchphrase. I was trying not to do that. Or your tagline.
You did. Well, and since we don't have a guest today, and this is when I usually thank the guest and say, how do I get in touch with you? I'll put a plug in. I mentioned it very briefly. I'll put a plug in for Monday Moments newsletter. Folks, you want something that jumpstarts your week every Monday morning when you get around to opening your phone. Don't do it first thing in the morning when you first wake up. But when you get around to looking at your phone for messages, Monday Moments newsletter is right there. Will be right there at the top when you sign up. And it jumpstarts your week with a Stoic quote, and then something I lived, a lesson I learned that reinforces that Stoic quote. Pretty short, to the point. There's some other pieces in there that some other folks that have been subscribers for years love. They've told me they jump right to the business idea or somebody I met. But right there at the beginning, if you spend, 3 minutes Monday morning, read that Stoic quote, get your mind thinking, and then read my lesson from the previous week of what I learned, what I screwed up, so that you don't screw it up, so that you can live with intention and fulfill your purpose to achieve your own success. That's what Monday Moments newsletter will do for you. And the way you get it is you go to tribe-purpose.com, click the Get Started button, and just fill out the sign up for the newsletter. We ask for first name, last name, and your email. And it ain't going to nobody else. It's just us right here on the Tribe and Purpose team. So do that. Monday Moments newsletter. It's a great way to kick off your week each Monday morning. Camden, run us out.
I was just going to say, as somebody who reads it every Monday, it is great. That's not just him talking because he writes it. It is something that I use to jumpstart my thinking of the week. Just like I've been referencing the Frank Knight books and Marcus Aurelius meditation. Just like I use all those, I use Monday Moments to help jumpstart my thinking for the week. So I can't praise it enough. So, but yeah, you want to throw it over to me again so it's a little bit more natural?
Yeah. Camden, run us out.
All right. Thank y'all for listening to the Cam and Otis show. And a special thanks to nobody for joining us today. Gosh darn it, there's another strike on it. Hey, but I'm grading my own test, and I still think I'm doing a pretty great job. If you enjoyed today's
No,
episode.
in this case, I'm grading it.
Damn it. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to pass it along to someone else so they can enjoy it too. Make sure to follow the Cam and Otis show on Facebook and Instagram. And you can watch full videos of the show on our YouTube page. And while you're there, make sure you hit that subscribe button too. As always, the full archive of our videos is available at www.camandotisshow.com. Thanks again, and we'll see y'all next time.